like to call this work session to order for SAP project discussions. Go right ahead, identify ourselves for the record. Mr. Mayor, we'll start with you.
Thank you very much, Ethan Berkowitz, Mayor of Anchorage. Alderman Clarence, Deputy CFO.
Pete Peterson, Assembly.
Paul Holman, Assembly.
Dick Train, Assembly.
Elder Gray Jackson.
Mike Adams, City Manager.
Amy, you want to identify yourself for the record?
Yes, Amy Demofsky on the phone.
Anybody else on the phone? Okay, Mr. Mayor, we'll turn the time over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the Assembly. We wanted you to be apprised of the current situation with the SAP project, or current condition. And I would characterize it thusly, which is when this administration came into office, we encountered a project that was in disarray and seemed to be stalled out. And what we have done in the intervening 7 months is bring this thing back on the road. I look at it as a car that went in the ditch. We pulled it out of the ditch, and we are back on the road and getting things going in a meaningful way. You know, the transition report for the prior administration acknowledged that they had governance issues in trying to put together a project of this nature. We've had to put together a governance process and a governance teamwork, which has gone in a constructive fashion. Alden will give you more details about the accomplishments so far, the progress that we've made to this point, and why the prospects for success are as great as they are. So, all that being said, this is not a project I wanted to spend my time as mayor dealing with. This is a project that needs to be accomplished, and this is not something that any of us who want to make sure that Anchorage has the administrative capacity that it needs can shy away from. So we look forward to working with you as we continue to push this project forward. It's going to get done. It's going to get done in a way that when we're finished, we'll be able to turn our attention to other issues as well. So, Alden, if you want to.
I'm just going to briefly go back here just to hit the little slide here, kind of give everybody a little idea of what's happened over the last few months. We did, in August, we took a very wise pause to evaluate what was going on, and additionally involved the external review committee, because definitely some of the ideas and plans and direction that they came up with, we've certainly attempted to incorporate as we've moved forward. We were able to begin blueprinting again on October 12th. It's been a lot of work. We still have some blueprints to go, and I'll give you a status update of where we're at, but we've been making very good progress as we go through there. And then, I think even more importantly here, the mayor early this week went to Dallas and did negotiations with SAP, and you're going to see some nice results from that as well throughout as we go through this process, and the mayor's going to be able to talk about it. So we have been very busy. Also during that time period, we were able to get decisions on Kronos, as you're aware of, getting rid of Kronos and time management, and as well as upgrade our software, our system that we've had into a newer version. So we've had a lot of different streams going on right now. We've made a lot of accomplishments, and we've pushed a lot of things forward.
And I just want to say that none of these accomplishments would have been possible if we didn't have city employees, municipal employees that were working hard, and they deserve a lot of credit for the progress that's been made, as well as perseverance in the face of some real adversity. And it could have been easy for them to bog down, lose heart, and give up, but that's not who the municipal employees are, and they should be commended for the spirit as well as the expertise that they've shown throughout this process. And it's one of the reasons why I have confidence about our path forward.
And not only have they been working on this, they've been working on their regular jobs. So I mean, CAFR, absolutely. A year-end, W-2s, and very busy. So a lot of hard-working employees out there. So this slide here was just kind of put together very quickly here to show that so far the Assembly's appropriated a little bit over $49 million throughout since 2011 through 2015. We haven't spent all that money, but that's what's been appropriated currently through the process. And this is a slide as of yesterday that was put together to kind of show blueprinting and where we're at. As you will see, we have several groups that are completed, so we are ahead of schedule on some of those. For example, accounts payable, FERC, grant management, supply resource management within the purchasing. You'll also see that we have several with only one document left. We were targeting this coming Monday for completion, so you can see that in several of these areas we're down to either 1, 2, 3, 4 documents, so we're almost there. We have a couple of areas where we're behind. One of the areas, time management, that's switching from Kronos and moving into SAP. We got a late start on that one, but they're working very hard and very diligently to go through those documents. And then we have a couple other areas where we have a fair number of documents left, but in most of those areas, by next Friday, which would be the 4th, for example, assets and project systems, those are committed to be finished next Friday. We are a little bit farther behind on GL and CO, which are controlling and general ledger, but we have a plan that we're working through to be able to get those completed. But we're adding about 2 or 3% completion a day, so we're at 81% right now, but we're very confident that by the end of next week, we're going to be approaching 90, and we have a plan to get the last couple done. As I mentioned, for those of you who may or may not be aware, I thought yesterday, after we have this done, we're also going to do a thorough blueprint closure process, which we've never accomplished before. We're going to look at 3 complete streams, like hire to retire and so forth, where we're going to be able not just to look at these documents individually, which as you can see is over 1,064, but we're going to be able to spend a couple of weeks to go through there and make sure that while everybody was working individually, we were able to capture everything as a group or as a process. And we want to be able to look at these things now and change our blueprint rather than waiting until we get into realization to go live and then have to do change orders and have to worry about additional costs. So we're going to spend a couple of weeks here in March doing 3 big process flows all the way from beginning to end, looking for integration points, all the different things to make sure we didn't miss anything, any big gaps. So once we get these done, and that's going to take us a couple weeks, and will delay us a little bit right now, but I think it's better for us to deal with it now than to worry about it later and then have to worry about the cost that goes with that. So Mayor, these are kind of the big success factors that you and I were able, and John were able to accomplish on Monday.
Wanted to make sure that the Assembly was aware of what we've been up to. Alden and John Marcinko and I were down Irving, Texas. I thought I was going to Dallas, but I went to Irving instead. Met with SAP, and we were able to get some additional concessions based on their initial offering, more than a $650,000 price reduction based on what they put forward in front of us. Some language in our agreement that would make sure that they wouldn't be fully paid until the system was up and going. We gave them some incentives, some additional incentives to complete the project ahead of schedule. We reached an agreement that in order for this to move forward, the municipality and SAP had to act together as partners. There's an alignment that we have now that we did not have then. SAP's reputation is on the line, and they recognize that. I made that abundantly clear to them that I was happy to tell the story of our experience with SAP. I hoped it would turn out to be a good story, and I left it hanging what would happen if it were not a good story. They wanted to make sure that we were committed to seeing the process through. I did that as well. One of the things that we did was, instead of looking simply at today, we looked at tomorrow. That's why there's an element in there for making sure that SAP is going to support a program at the university so we can grow our own SAP experts. So in the future, as we need to do things with an SAP system, we're going to have Alaskans who are able to step into those jobs and fulfill those functions. And this is part of their corporate social responsibility. They recognize it, and we encourage it. It's part of what's going to make this system more appealing for us in the future, because it'll mean that we're going to be able to hire the folks here and maybe even have them work for the municipality. Finally, the final sort of major element that we got is they have a large conference on an annual basis where people who use the SAP system are brought up to date, kept informed, share notes, all those good things that happen at conferences, and they offered to host 10 municipal employees at that conference.
So some pretty substantial success with that meeting, and it was all based upon the mayor going down there and being in front of them, so they knew the commitment of the municipality of Anchorage to getting this project done. So now, what project are we talking about? And I'll go through this. So this is kind of a combination slide. It talks about the timeline as well as the scope. I'm going to go through the timeline first. The timeline is kind of broken into 4 distinct pieces. First off, we're currently in blueprinting, which is on the very left there, but it's then a 2-week prep and a 26 realization build. That's when they'll take all the blueprints, they'll go back, they'll actually do the coding, all the programming, look at the system we currently have, basically configure the system to the municipality of Anchorage, and that's estimated to take, with the prep, 28 weeks. Then there's a 15-week realization test period. This is where, through the consultants and limited community resources as well, through different stages, we will be testing that configuration and ensuring that what we have is actually what we want. And if not, we're making the tweaks at that point in time. And then there's a 9-week user acceptance training, which is where the municipal staff will really get in there and learn and test and do all of those things. That's actually when, at the conclusion of that, when the system goes live, is that at the conclusion of that period of time, and then they have a 4-week go-live support afterwards where they will be supporting that. So what we have here is SAP will be basically the system implementer. I think you've heard that terminology before, or the prime, however you would like to talk about that. But then, and in the next slide I'll show you, we'll show you that they will be using Peloton and additional local resources as we get to that. But SAP is going to be the prime or the leader in every single one of, not only the entire project, but in every one of these work streams as well. So the work streams that we're looking at, there's a data conversion. We have to convert data from PeopleSoft into the new system. There'll be a lead and stream for that. BW and data migration is an area where we'll be able to put the information in and be able to get reports and so forth out of there. The finance and HCM modules, those have been the core system that the assembly and the municipality have been looking for. All the modules, all the work, and all of that are built into those streams, as well as in the testing stream, as I mentioned, as they go through and test. Throughout this entire process, we have an OCM, which is a change management. That's the communication, the training, the knowledge transfer, the getting the employees of the municipality of Anchorage excited to use the system. We can have the greatest system in the world, but if we don't have the use of it at the end, it won't be of much use. Then we have something that you're very well aware of. It's been brought up by Zig multiple times, and I know you've asked and heard about it. We have an ECM component, that's electronic content management. We've scaled it back, but we've included it. So the 3 departments that have the highest use, which would be the ER department, birth certificates, marriage license, purchasing, all the contracts and everything that goes along with that, and AP, all the invoices and everything come through. It is our intent to go in and blueprint and actually engage with the licenses and the users. We will start there with an ECM component.
And I would say the ECM component is, we heard what the user said, we heard what Zig said, we heard what the assembly wanted, and this is a change in scope, and after evaluation, we thought it was important to include it on the project moving ahead.
And this is a starting point. And then after we go live, as we get this going, we can always add additional users and licenses and incorporate it throughout the entire municipality as we grow. And then, of course, throughout the entire time period, there's a governance structure. I mean, that's what we've talked about, how important that is to have. And then basics and security. This is basically, we have to have SAP do this because we do not have the internal skill set currently available to provide the security of the system and all of the things that need to be set up to make the system work. So that's what we have here. So what you can see, it's basically it's a 59-week schedule, but it's really 56 weeks of work, but we have 3 weeks in there that we have for holidays and so forth that we felt that we probably wanted to take those into consideration. But this is our plan, and I think we're looking for mid-2017 for go live at the latest, and that's our goal here as we go through. But this is prepared. This is what SAP is going to be held to once we begin the realization to go live phase. And then lastly, as I mentioned, this is kind of the breakdown of the numbers. As I mentioned, SAP, just under 14 million. This is what's been negotiated down. We have incorporated Peloton and local resources from SAP's original proposal, and that's an effort to kind of keep our costs down, and also, more importantly, keep our current consultants that we have that have the experience, because we have Peloton and Alaska resources right now, doing that on the project, because they've already gained all that knowledge, and we want to make sure we use that knowledge going forward to help us out. And then we have the municipal labor resources, that we have an allocation for that to make sure that we have labor from the municipality incorporated into this process, because that's something that's very important. And as we keep talking about how important it is that this is a system that we own, and we have to have employees that are engaged, and then throughout this process, them being actively involved will certainly help. And then we have, as you're aware of, John, the PMO consultant, we have allocated for that. So what's also most important here, I think, as well, is we want to make sure we have a contingency to take into consideration something that might happen or might come up throughout the process. So I think, Mike, you were going to talk about how they would be seeing this information through the process going forward.
So there's a number of assembly decisions that are necessary in order for us to move forward from this point on. As Alden mentioned, if you put the budget slide, that last one back up, we're going to ask you to approve a number of contracting steps and one funding step. As you saw on an earlier slide, the Assembly has appropriated approximately $50 million to this project to date, 49.3 to that means that we still need another approximately $21 million to finish the project. We will introduce an AR with an AM necessary to do that at the meeting on March 8th. That'll be on the regular agenda.
Actually, on the 22nd of March, I think.
For public hearing. We will recommend public hearing and action on the 22nd. Also on March 8th, you'll see 2 additional contracting authorizations put before you. One will be to add $1 million to SAP's existing blueprinting contract so that they can complete the blueprinting work. You'll remember that when you authorized additional funding for SAP's contracting effort late last year, that we knew that it might not be enough to finish the blueprinting, and as it turns out, it is not. So we're asking for another $1 million of authorization for blueprinting. We're also asking for an additional, I think, $600 and something thousand for Mr. Marcinko's contract. He'll be working with Alden to manage the project from the owner's perspective for the next 15 months or so. So those 2 contracts are ready. They can be funded. As you remember, you've provided that $49.3 million so far. We have not spent all of that. We're about $3 to $4 million left on that spending. So that's that $3 to $4 million balance will pay for the extra $1 million for SAP's blueprinting effort, and it'll pay for Mr. Marcinko's contract for the remainder of the project. We can't afford most of the rest of this extra expense, obviously, inside that $3 to $4 million. So we're not asking you to endorse the contracting steps that are on this page on March 8th. Those will wait until after you've taken action on the appropriation item on the 22nd, because obviously you're not going to want for us to sign contracts without funding being available. So on the 22nd, you will see the additional contracting steps that will be for SAP, Peloton. Those are the 2 primary ones you'll see on the 22nd. The local resources piece that Alden's identified, those are going to be bid over the next, those will be out on the street in the next couple of weeks. And to the extent that they require assembly approval, that they exceed the threshold for administrative approval, they'll come to the assembly over the next couple of months. So we will build that. The MOA resources piece, that will be stuff that will be spent either on as payroll or potentially as local contractors to support our effort. That is the backfill for the municipal employees that will be actively supporting the SAP project. So in order for the departments, because this will be impactful on the departments, so in order for them to remain in a functional condition and meet all of our regular expectations of them over the next year and a half, we will need to support them. That's what that $4 million will do. And we'll be able, over time, to give you detailed descriptions of where that $4 million is spent, which departments are going to use it, how they're going to do it. Some departments will add employees. Some departments will use some contractors. Others will use overtime and other mechanisms to help maintain their productivity while they're also supporting the SAP project going forward. As you remember, we took, in the past, that had primarily been funded through the operating budget. We stripped the operating budget for 2016 and beyond of SAP-related expenses and told you at that time that we were going to be putting those expenses inside the capital request. That's what this is. So this is that. So we took $2 or $3 million out of the operating budget for 2016, and instead we're funding for 2016 and 2017. We have a $4 million budget for that internal support. So that's what that is. That may or may not require assembly approval during the course of the year. If we do use contractors for any of that, and those contracts require assembly approval, you'll see that. Otherwise, that'll just flow through to the payroll lines of municipal departments. So Alden also mentioned that you see the contingency out there. That will be a contingency whereby the administration will be able to manage the project going forward. So the net is that we will be asking you for an additional $21.8 million of funding authority. And we'll be asking that you support that through the extension of the master lease arrangement. So that will be the funding mechanism, the source of funds, if you will, that we propose going forward. There's approximately $50 million already out there in that same funding stream. As we've told many of you individually and some of you in sessions like this, that was going to be the funding mechanism, and that in fact is what will be before you for introduction on the 8th and action on the 22nd. So there is another work session scheduled. We expected that this would hit you kind of flat today. You know, we didn't expect you to necessarily have all of the questions developed that we know you'll want to ask today. So the Assembly leadership has scheduled a work session for the end of next week. I think it's next Thursday, whereby you'll have a chance to process this and build questions for us for the action steps that are for March 8th. If additional work sessions are necessary before the 22nd, we're available at your convenience to meet again. We realize these are big numbers and big tasks. This is a very impactful request of the Assembly, and we fully expect that you'll have lots of questions for us, and we hope we can answer them. And if not next week, then the week after we'll be available to help do that.
Thank you, Mike.
So that concludes, I think, our presentation for you. We're certainly available to answer questions now,
We'll have that
and then
members
again
in line.
next week.
So we'll start with you, Paul, first.
Thank you. Well, first of all, because of my current work schedule, if the next work session's on Thursday, I likely will
It's
not
on
be
a
able to.
Friday.
It's on Friday.
Actually, I just checked, it is Thursday.
Thursday.
Then I likely won't be able to attend, so I will try to get my questions to the chair, through the clerk, and then perhaps have, if there's any questions. And I have a few, but some I'll have to do reflection, recollection, and memory, since this goes back a number of years. But I will just, I guess, make a comment. Number one is, regardless of whether contracts come in above or below the line that needs approval from the Assembly body, I would just request this administration in as much transparency as possible so that we can get the fuel gauge, the dashboard or something, so we can keep track of the total all-in cost, you know, at what level, whatever level, whether it's the muni labor pool backfilling or contracts as it goes along. I think it helps everyone, it eases our mind, and certainly helps us answer questions from constituents, and certainly be able to do that. So that'd be one thing.
We will absolutely commit to any reasonable process that you guys put forward, whether it's.
And even some unreasonable ones.
Even
That'd be good.
unreasonable. If it's through your contract with Zico, if it's direct contact with assembly staff or assembly members, you let us know what kind of information you're looking for and how frequently you want it, and we will build our reporting system to meet that need.
I know that I'll be able to help, perhaps unless it gets postponed, I can't see that happening, but I'll be on the body to work with this funding source, the request here. But as you know, as of April 19th, effectively, depending on the outcome of the election, but I won't be on the body going forward to see this to its completion. But I have to admit, in my ownership from the beginning of my role as part of the body from the very beginning, there was a lot of nervousness and a lot of concerns and again, this may be a recollection thing, I may have to take a pause and get that later, but I want to say, if my colleagues can help me, this was proposed somewhere around the 20 to 25 million range. We would have an all-in product.
9.6 million.
That's what we're.
Yeah, 9.6, and then it jumped up almost double that within a year. So anyway, looking at this sticker price and then knowing we're going to be about 70 million all in when it's done, and that's if everything goes in on as well, is a substantial amount in increase. And I recognize, Mr. Mayor, that you adopted this, as you say, very eloquently. It's not necessarily what you really wanted to spend your time and attention.
Let me just say, I think that 9.6 million was unrealistic.
Right.
And for it to have been sold as an all-in price was unrealistic.
So, saying that, I wanted to kind of acknowledge too, the state, through its database upgrade for apps and this public safety information network, which, by the way, the municipality uses in some capacity. They botched their system, if you will, and I think they scrapped the plan at nearly 30 million. It was close to 30 million on their product. And we made a conscious decision as a body to go forward with this. And I personally have no problem, and professionally, I think it was the right thing to do, because we need to get with the times and update. So my challenge to the administration and to my colleagues going forward is, don't lose sight of the fact that when this project is go live and we're working at it, that there's still going to be updates and upgrades needed, and that comes with a price tag. And not to postpone and kick down the road, because frankly, 10 years from now, another body, another mayor, another administration may be looking at, oh my God, we didn't keep up with the date and up with the time. And maybe this product helps us to stay on task and on track. But I want to say I own my role of I know there were several times Mr. Greg Jackson, Mr. Trainee, and I objected to some of the funding requests and some of the decisions made on the previous administration, and tried to hold them to task. But in any event, it is what it is, and I won't pontificate any further. I won't be at the next work session, but I'll try to get my questions in. Thank you very much for the very informative presentation.
Thank you, Paul. Amy, you're next, ma'am.
I'll hold my questions till the next work session.
Okay.
Thank you.
Elby?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't necessarily have any questions. The first thing I want to say is I'm excited that FERC blueprinting is done, because that's a big deal, whether everybody realizes it or not. That's a big deal. So I'm excited about the FERC blueprinting. And our contractor, his estimate was going to be $80 million. So I'm even more excited to see that your funding, the total price for this is going to be almost $9 million less than what our contractor said it would be. So that makes me very happy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Before I go on, just one comment from me. I want to recognize that Ms. Johnson's joined us. Thank you, ma'am. I'm glad you've got SAP as a prime contractor on this. That should have been done when this was initially brought forward to us. When I looked at how San Diego did it, San Diego deviated first. They didn't go with SAP, but they corrected it with SAP, and it was brought in successfully. And now SAP has got their name on the line on this thing. I think we'll see a lot more desire to have this thing working. Let's see, Tim, you're next.
Yeah, I want to congratulate the administration in your effort to grab a hold of this monster and try to make it work for us. And when I first came on this body, the first complaint I had with the administration was they were asking for more money. And I asked the person that was in charge of it, send them money.
It's in the donation.
Yeah, I said, is this the last you're asking for, this $3 million that she was asking for? She says, oh yeah, this is it. He squared away with that. There was never the commitment that your administration has shown to do it, to get it done, and to buy into it. They hired the contractor and they spent the money and they thought that it'll be done, and we'll just wait and have them tell us that it's fine and go on. This is a lot of work. This is very traumatic. I know that some of the employees have been very disillusioned in this whole process. So there'll be a little cheerleading necessary, I'm sure, throughout the staff as well. But we need a system. We need something that's going to work for us. And so I'm excited about the possibility. I hope that Zig will be brought into it so that he works well, understands what's going on, and is a piece of it as well. Anyway, good job. We'll see what happens.
Pete, you're next, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the only question I have is, how are we finding enough people to do the work? Have we still got ads out there that we're trying to recruit people, and are we having any success with that?
Well, once SAP becomes the prime on this, they're responsible for getting all the resources. We lose the system implementer role that we've been playing from a blueprinting standpoint, and it kind of shifts to them. The local resources, as we've mapped out there, which will go out with the ITD, I'm very confident that there's people in Anchorage that will have the skill set. Those are our trainers, communication people that we're trying. We want to have local people for that resource. And I'm very confident we'll be able to find that. My biggest concern and my biggest hope is that all the consultants that we currently have, that we want to keep that knowledge is to the greatest degree possible, we keep those people. That's the most important thing, because they establish those relationships between the employees. They know what the desires were. They know they put the documents together. That's my biggest concern, is keeping them, and we'll do our best to make that happen. But the realization to go live has a tremendous number of additional people. We didn't put it up there, but it's somewhere like 116 roles. We have like 30-some consultants right now, 30, 35 in that ballpark, but there's like over 100 people that will be working on this. But SAP has to manage those people, and if for some reason they lose 5, then they have to find either make it up with the new 5 or whatever to be able to do that. So I'm hopeful that given that, and they've also shown us as well through some of the other things, that they have the capability of bringing those resources to bear when they need it.
Anything else, sir?
And I was just happy to see that we got 10 people going to that convention so they can get some training. And because, we want to make sure the people we have know this well enough so that they feel confident in being able to.
Ms. Johnson, I know you were here for the presentation.
Yeah, I'll
Any
wait
comments
till,
on that?
no, I'll wait till.
Paul?
I also want to forgot to mention, so thank you for making the decision on the Kronos timepiece, getting rid of that. I think there's another thing hanging out there in some of the departments, telestaff or something like that. There's so much confusion with it. It was very punitive, it seemed, to the employees, very restrictive, like 5 or 6 minutes on either side of the start time and time of their shifts. And then otherwise you'd have to disrupt the supervisor to do an exception. It was just demoralizing, and it looked like we were going backwards in that way. There's a lot of ways to do electronic payroll. My wife works for the federal government. I work at the state now with the University League. They're doing electronic payroll, and it's much simpler than what we were seeing in our neck of the woods. So I'm all excited about efficiencies and not having to do all this paper and trying to keep track and the audit trails that go along with that, but doing it smarter, and I think that's the way we're doing it. So again, looking forward to seeing this thing through its completion. It won't be on the body, but it certainly will be something I can look back on with a positive thought rather than oy vey, what did I do? So thank you.
Any other comments from assembly members? One final comment, thank you for changing the name back to what it should be, SAP, and get rid of Synergy. Appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for your negotiations down there. I wish the last administration had hired the correct implementer for this. When I saw what they did with Black and Beach, and then they settled that out of court without the city ever getting any remuneration for the problems caused by that implementer, it's a problem. It's a case study on how not to implement SAP. So I look forward to SAP now actually getting this thing online. You were talking about Lucinda. I can't tell you how many times we had a meeting, when you were there. We only need a few $1 million more and it would go live on this date. They finally had to admit they did have no go live date on this thing. Yeah. So. Amy, any questions, ma'am? Amy?
Oh, no, sorry, I had to take you off mute. Nope, I'll hold my questions to the next meeting.
Okay. Then this work session's over with. Until the next meeting we have on this. Get your questions and comments into the clerk, please, so we can make distribution to everybody on them. And thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks for the administration.